Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Unofficial Broadcast show with me, your host, Mars Swan. I am here joined by some incredible names, some familiar faces if you're familiar with me, maybe, but who knows about that. I have the one and only, one of the men in the middle familiar to me as saying, the one and only Sam Initialized. Have good, sir. Hello, how are you, mate?
Very happy to be here talking minor regions plans, and of course the great word of DFM. So where we always start with a banter nice and early.
Oh, absolutely. Bring it in, LJL. But, oh wait, we've got one other with us, Initialized. We came with backup. It's Random Minion Caster, but I don't know if you're quite representing us with that background here. That's not a kitchen.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not. Today, I guess I'm a traitor to the LJL because I'm here representing CBLoL, one of the most fun regions in the world. And as much as I love the Church of DFM here, yep, today I go loud.
Oh, I love to hear it. Welcome, sir, and we have the one, honestly, the only Rebel Foxcaster. You're part of a region which is kind of like a big sister, almost, to the LJL and the CBLoL. You are technically already in the main stage, the group stage, as they like to say, but you're here for play-in, sir, and you've got a very special team with Saigon Buffaloes. Welcome to the show, sir.
Yeah, it's spectacular. It's really nice also to not have to wake up at 4 in the morning in order to cover one of these regions for the first time in my existence. I know some of you guys feel that as well when you're covering LJL and some of the Eastern stuff. So I'm just happy to be here and not completely asleep at the time. That's pretty nice.
That's our one and only producer, and honestly, person that brought it together. That's Spoods. We love you, Spoods. Thank you so much.
Spoods.
Spoods at SpoodsLol, I believe, is their Twitter handle. I imagine I'll get told if it's not, and I'm believing it's correct. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. We are the Unofficial Broadcast show, and we are many experts, all from around minor regions. With this, we're here to provide our expertise, some entertainment for you, and honestly, unbiased content that you can truly believe we have your best interest in mind. But with that said, we're actually going to move over to our first section of the show, gentlemen. Yes, we have many sections of the show. Oh, thank you. Initialize. The first one we're going to be doing is we're going to be discussing playoffs. Right, so playoffs discussion and our expert discussion. We're going to be using a show where we're actually, it's rather interesting because we have three experts from three different regions here. We thought we'd kick it off with a game show. Now, gentlemen, I assume you're all familiar with game shows. You grew up with them as children. Yeah, what kind of one, Sam?
The Hunger Games. Yeah, pretty standard game show, I feel.
I thought you were going to come out like Takeshi's Castle or something.
Yeah, Takeshi's Castle is great. Takeshi's Castle is great, it matters.
RMC Rebel Fox, what's your favorite game show?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to see such a boomer. I feel like we just had a discussion about me being a boomer before we went on stream. And I'm going to say Wheel of Fortune, man. I'm going to sound so boomer when I say that. But it's a classic. It's good.
It is. It's a absolute banger. Rebel Fox.
Oh, this is a tough one. You ever watch Deal or No Deal with like Howie Mandel or the cases? That's got to be the best one. I love that one back in the day.
I'll throw out a tangent here. I'll throw out a real Japanese tangent.
Sure.
There is a game show in Japan where they basically have a group of people and they have a room, just a random room made up. And one of the objects in the room is actually like a sweet or chocolate. And they all look incredibly like realistic. So they're going around, it's like, someone bites a shoe and turns out to be fudge. And it's like, congratulations, you win like £1 million for eating someone's shoe and it actually not being a shoe but fudge. And someone eating a table, it's actually just a table. And it's like, well, this is really upsetting. And then somebody else eats like a door handle. The door handle's actually chocolate. It's great. Highly recommend that game show.
No idea. In this game show, Sam, maybe I'll find a way to ship you cakes or maybe not cakes of random objects if you win or lose this game show we're about to go
really upset with that.
I take the door handle right now. I actually am missing a door handle right now, so I'd rather that than the chocolate.
It's gonna melt.
I have to also interpose something. Is it just like they don't know what's chocolate, so is it you have to determine it before you take a bite, or are you just biting random things around the room until you find the chocolate?
I heard you needed a cake. I found a bread loaf instead.
Oh, that was fast, Muscle. You shipped that real quick.
Gentlemen, I'm going to quickly explain how the game shows will work here. If I can truly have all the attention on me for a split second. I love you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be giving our contestants here 1 minute on why their team is going to do so well. And what we've decided to do is we've got a few X's at the bottom right-hand corner. What this means is any of our experts can buzz in, myself included, because of course I can. And what we can do is prevent that person from continuing to talk and really hype up their region. Once they go, that's gone, and we won't be. And then after each of our contestants have gone, we'll have a round-up discussion and try and decide who maybe gave the best argument for their region. Now, there are bonus points and merits that people can individually take just from knowing one another. We know one another here, gentlemen, rather well, so I feel like we can use maybe certain verbals that we each are known to certain go. So LJL, it's pretty easy for me. But with that said, Spoods, we're going to go to our first contestant. We're going to go in order, gentlemen, that you're currently sitting here. So Sam, we're going to begin with you.
Wonderful.
You're going to be representing the LJL as a minor region, discussing their playoffs, and then also why you think they're going to do so well in play-in.
So to clarify, I get a minute, and then you guys got to try and buzz me out if I'm not good. Is that the way this works?
You have to convince us to keep talking.
Okay, right.
Keep
I'm
going.
with you. All right, let me.
If we start thinking your arguments aren't there, we might buzz you in.
Chords. Give me a quick sip of the water. Let's get. All right, I'm good. Let's go.
All right, Spoods, if you can move us over to only initialize, please, for the full camera. Ready, initialize. Spoods, if we can restart the timer and if you can give me an account in. And go.
Friends, Romans, unofficial broadcasters, lend me your ears, for I am here to tell you about a monstrous team from the Far East, the land of the rising sun, named Detonation FocusMe. They won for the 4th time in a row this summer and became the most dominant regional team of all time in League of Legends history, with getting their 14th title. And they have done it in a way that is kind of extraordinary, frankly, because early on in the LJL's existence, they were just better than everyone else. And that made the difference. They just became really, really good and went away with it. This split has been different. These last 2 years have been different because they have been on a trend to gather the absolute best players in the region alongside some choice imports to create a force that is absolutely uncontested and can really fight to get to groups. This time around, even the likes of Sengoku Gaming could do nothing to stop this team. Even the competition in the LJL really rising up over the summer split could not bring down this Titan, who were able to play through top lane, mid lane, bot lane, with a support jungle duo of Harp and Steel that just seemed to be on a different level to everyone else. We saw completely ridiculous and varied playstyles. The mid laner Yaharong managed to simultaneously have the best laning stats and the highest roam percentage of any mid laner in the league, which is absurd. You've got Utapon, who's suddenly able to play much more lane dominantly, the likes of the Lucian, Nami, something which he's never had the same capability to do before, with the way the teams often had to play around, say, topside particularly. And speaking of topside, you've got arguably the best top laner in the major regions out there, named Ebby. This is a guy that was scouted to be picked up by the likes of Splice in 2017, and he's only got better since then. He's playing everything from Gwen to Urgot to Fiora to Ornn and popping off on all of them.
4,
if you cannot
3,
beat him,
2,
you cannot beat the LJL. He's too good.
That's you initialize the full 2 minutes you went through. Well done, sir. What a performance. I mean, partially expected by me, but I mean, that's just me.
I did have slight bias on the X's there, because it was only gonna be, I had someone in the back seat. I may have bought the audience, or rather the host.
It's just how it sometimes goes, but I think you gave a rather good audience. But we'll come back to what we thought fully of your argument in a bit later. RMC, if we can bring it over to you, sir. You're going to be representing CBLoL in your discussion here. Spoods, if we can get that. Right, count us in. And go.
Okay, so welcome to Brazil, a beautiful land filled with jungle, with beaches, with great cities, and most importantly, it's filled with carnivals of fun here. Granted, CBLoL isn't necessarily the best region when it comes to League of Legends, but as of today, we are now world champions in other Riot games. Now, specific to our representatives this split here. Loud, that is a team that perhaps you're not familiar with, but if you follow social media at all, especially Portuguese social media, let's talk about Loud, because Loud is the biggest social media phenomenon in Brazil. Over 1 billion views on YouTube here, and every esports they've broken into, they've won. You know, we're talking Valorant, we're talking League of Legends. They started with Crossfire here, and they've won all of it. They finally won League of Legends this time. Not only did they win, but let's talk playoffs for this team, because yeah, they struggled when they first came around, but this split, CBLoL has always been an incredibly competitive internal region. You know, it's not a one-team league. It's different representatives every split here. Loud won with back-to-back trios against former world representatives Rid Canids, who just won back-to-back splits in Brazil, and against Pain Gaming, the winners before that, MSI 2021. Even better, there's juicy drama with this team. The top laner and mid laner were representatives from Pain Gaming in MSI 2021. So they beat them. They're going to Worlds again. And let's talk about some of our best players here. Mid lane, Tinones, one of those people I just talked about. Every time he goes to an international event, he delivers. 2014, Kaboom, Alliance. Anybody remember that? If not, check it out. That was Tinones. He did that, took out EU, got C9 into the main stage. 2021 MSI, Mad Lions almost lost both their games against CBLoL. Rip.
You mentioned Kaboom. Can't have that.
I did. Oh, come on.
An RMC with that. That's 3 X's, so I'm sorry.
Kaboom forever. I have no regrets. Kaboom.
That's the way to live, RMC. That's definitely the CBLoL life and maybe fan way of it as well. You vicariously live through Valorant and then you project that onto the League team. I think that might be a good strategy, actually, going into this Worlds. Potentially, it might be their opportunity. But lastly, though, Rebel Foxcast, you are here for the VCS. Obviously, you're here more to represent the Saigon Buffaloes at this moment in time, but you can honestly pull any and all punches. You've got options ahead of you, sir. So, I mean, the floor is yours, Spoots, if you can get ready to count us in. And go.
In 2020, there was an issue with Saigon Buffalo. They placed 8th inside of the VCS, and they were sitting ready to get promoted or demoted and kicked out of the VCS altogether. And they made one of the boldest calls that I've ever seen inside of professional esports. They brought in 3 academy players to play the promotion tournament exclusively. No other work outside of anything that they would have done inside of scrims in order to make things work. And you know what happened? They re-qualified. They got second. They didn't get second in the promotion tournament. They were expected to be 8th in the entirety of the VCS. But they re-qualified with those 3 players. That split, they would go on to take second place over top of a team that was near favorite to be a top 2 contender and a team that went undefeated on the front half of the split, losing only to GAM. Since then, they have been the only team to challenge GAM inside of the top spot for the VCS for the entirety of the duration of the last 4 splits in the VCS. They've been locked in the hyperbolic time chamber against one of the best teams that's been around in some of the play-ins, in some of the minor regions, and everything all together. And they've had an opportunity to develop talent. They've taken their mid laner from being somebody who plays Rammus mid lane and Galio with heal and with Ghost in the same game as summoner spells, and having only 5 to 6 CS per minute into being one of the most fearsome mid laners inside of the VCS. They brought in 2 of the most promising young players inside of the entirety of VCS, together with BeanJ being one of the best junglers, who even some of the coaches that have come around from the region have really given a lot of praise to, and Taki, one of the best players that made showings inside of any region, one of the best supports that has come out of a lot of the minor regions, all bundled together with the best ADC inside of the VCS this split. Shogun, one of the best team fighters that we have seen in a Remarkables era. And now you get to see this wonderful team who have some of the best content that you'll ever see in post games, something that I could only hope that they could drag onto the world stage. And you can see the type of passion they got.
Cut you off there, Rebel Fox. You almost made it through truly to the last second timer. Sadly, though, you were unsuccessful. Though I thought you did a fantastic job there. You got a lot of information in there in a very condensed amount of time. Was there a bit of practice behind that speech?
No, that was improvised from the start on.
I appreciated the history lesson, actually. That was super cool.
I didn't get to the ending either. That sucks, because there's a picture that I had Spoots prepared, but we'll see it later, I guess.
Oh, okay. I see. Now you're making me feel bad. I wanted the picture.
Okay.
Can we Spoots bring up the picture? I want to talk about the most passionate man I've ever seen. Look at this picture. Look at it. This is
Doing
their
me
victory
wishes.
over top of Team Secret when they were challenging, and this team went from literally 8th place and almost demoted out of VCS to 2nd place in the VCS during spring 2021. That's what you have to do. How do you hate this? How can you hate this right here and tell me that's not the most passionate player you've ever seen in your life?
Maybe if you started with that photo, I wouldn't have given you the X.
That's it. Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. If you had said that, I'd have X'd you immediately. Because have you seen CBLoL? Oh man, I kind of wish Red were representatives again because Red is like absolutely cracked. And you know what? Axe, here in chat, send me some pictures of like Grefta or Avenger screaming, please, or Teton, so that we can show Rebel what passion looks like in Brazil.
Just so you guys know, in the chat right now, Rebel just X minion cast.
Can't put me on the spot like that.
Wow.
Oh, it's funny. Oh,
With that, though,
All right.
gentlemen, what do you think of each of your arguments? I mean, what do we first think of Sam's arguments? Obviously, CBLoL. He brought in a lot of the points around them. How convinced were you both, RMC and Rebel? I mean, Rebel, if I can come to you first, you gave an X. You were the only one out of all of us to give the X to Sam.
Yes. So the reason I gave the X was because he mentioned Lucian Nami, and we have a very big hatred for Lucian Nami in a number of places that I cast, which is the only reason. We all have our specific. I mean, obviously mentioning Kaboom is just a no-no, and for me, that's the same thing here. But it was a well-crafted argument. I think you hit a lot of the things that we talked about for LJL and preparation that we're going to be able to see for the thing. I wish you had mentioned a little bit of MSI. There's that one.
Yeah,
little thing,
that's true.
I wanted to talk
That
about
was-
MSI a little bit, but.
I ran out of time because I started with a bloody Shakespeare quote, so that was my fault.
I gave the English major the expertise of the LJL, and we get first 15 seconds of that. I blame myself,
It's
Sam.
my fault.
I blame myself. Coming over to RMC, I mean, you had 11 seconds left on the counter, so you had most of your argument given. And honestly, I thought you actually did a pretty good job of convincing the bit of history as well. I liked how you interdispersed that in, because obviously this wasn't a team we saw at MSI, like you previously mentioned.
Yeah, like I said, they're kind of a newer team. They just franchised last year. I was debating about talking about that, but I figured, gotta hit the main points. One point I didn't really get to talk about, I really wanted to, was we've got a rookie on this team again who just joined this split. We've got Rebel talking about rookies on VCS. Yeah, we don't have 2 rookies. We've only got 1, but still, he's only just started playing. And CBLoL keeps sending rookies. We did the same thing with Red last Worlds too, and Greftar really performed then. So I've got kind of high hopes as well for our rookie Brent C this time as well.
Again, I appreciate the history lesson. It's good to sort of get like the drama with this team. It's always good to get those kind of stories. What stories in, and again, for all that, again, we'll probably be doing some analytical breakdown of what we're expecting of these teams. Part of why this podcast is kind of important as well is giving over some of the stories for these teams, so people kind of have a better reason to root for these guys. Because otherwise, you end up with like a lot of faceless numbers and not a lot of like passion or character to these teams. It's really cool hearing that. I will say though that the moment you go, well, it's because they wanted the Valorant, therefore it's good. It's like I can't. I'm going. I was getting very close to hitting the X. I was like, yeah. If the best you've got for me is it was an awkward playoffs run, but they wanted the Valorant, so by transitive properties they'll do well.
This is why.
And then you tried to kaboom me. Like, what are you doing?
Kaboom killed me.
The kaboom was a mistake, but I mentioned Valorant in the first 20 seconds because I still had immunity in the first 20 seconds.
Oh, well, it's okay.
Can we get another CBLoL expert, Spirit? Is there someone just...
No, he's also an LJL expert. We need him here technically for bias de-initialize. Well, if you want that, if you want assistance, I must be independent at all. And Rebel Fox, I think you had, honestly, I'm rather impressed you kind of rap God halfway through that with the amount of information just thrown at me about both teams as well. That was the impressive part. You talked about both of them. RMC, coming to you, what did you think? Because you did join us on the X. You were the second one, actually, to give an X.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate it. I think Rebel was really getting through quite a lot of the info there. One of the reasons why I kind of X'd it was because it felt like, we were getting a lot of information about Saigon Buffaloes, kind of, but like, it's like, okay, best rookie, best this. Like, great. We can talk best later, Rebel, because you're going to be competing against other regions best at this point, which is kind of why I X'd it. But yeah, it was really good. And I am looking forward to hearing you, give more information, have a bit more space. 1 minute or 2 minutes is kind of restrictive a little bit.
Yeah. I think I'll add in on that as well. I think, again, it was really cool hearing the kind of ridiculous level up of some of the team and the players, like Froggy in particular. When I did a little bit of I did a little bit of work with the VCS English when I was casting Froggy. Guy kind of sucked. There was a literal joke that Levi was
The
basically
Levi
getting
did.
all his
Yeah.
CS by
Yeah.
stealing it from Froggy by like somehow through portals from other
Mm.
games because he was that bad at CSing and he's gone to be one of the absolute best in the region, which is a remarkable growth. So it was really good hearing that story. I think I kind of fell away though when he started sort of like getting a little bit generic, like this guy's the best in the region, this guy's the best. Like cool. I wanted a bit more about Saigon as a whole because actually, while Gamma the first seed, for the longest time this split, it felt like Saigon Buffalo really had like everybody's number in the region. Like it was nuts. It was only in playoffs where they kind of stumbled towards the end a little bit. Because even in that upper bracket, right, they got the initial victory. So I was excited to hear a bit more about that, and I'm sure we will later on because it was a really cool VCS playoffs.
So-
Absolutely, we will. We've got so much still to go through here in this show of the unofficial broadcast. And gentlemen, I want to ask one final question to really wrap this up. Was anyone swayed to switch regions?
I mean, does it count? Does it count as if I'm swayed if I already thought VCS were quite good?
No, that's just intelligence, I feel.
We already have a team, so there's something
Yeah.
there.
There is Gam, thus I am scared. There is always... Yes, yeah. Wait. Whoa. Well, bring that back because
Nothing happened there.
for you.
Nothing happened there.
we've got a very interesting section to
Disrespected
now
the Shogun.
move us over to, and that is going to be talking about the theory draws, theory crafting discussions. We're going to start us off with the format and how play-ins is going to work for Worlds play-ins. If I can get that graphic for us.
Dun, dun, dun.
The format graphic, my dear producer out there, if you are there. Yes.
There we go.
Just a bit of clarity
Yeah.
for you guys, because you guys couldn't hear the producer call. Spoots has so many graphics lined up. He's so
Yeah.
ready that the question was, which graphic?
Which
Not,
what?
Well, thank
Okay.
you so much, Spoots, over for that. So these are the two groups that every team, obviously, we've got the 4th seed here, RNG and DRX, both from the LPL and LCK respectively. We have the 4th seed from the LEC as well. That's Mad Alliance. We've got Fnatic, who are the 3rd seed as well for the LEC. Obviously, there are 2 teams from the LEC because sadly we could not get the CIS due to things. I will then move over to Beyond Gaming, who are going to be the 2nd seed over in Pool 1, and then we have the 3rd seed as well from Evil Genius, and then bring us over to the minor region, starting us off. Well, I guess also Beyond are technically a minor region, so we've already mentioned them. Saigon Buffaloes obviously are the 2nd seed for the VCS, and then we have Detonation FocusMe for the LJL, Chiefs for LOC. We have the Istanbul Wildcats for the TCL, Isras for the LLA, and Loud for CBLoL. And gentlemen, the format that they're going to be playing is going to be a best of 1 single round robin. They will then take those scores, and the top team will auto qualify for the group stage. 2nd place will then be the top seed in for the best of 5 format, and then 3rd and 4th seed will fight off, and then we'll try and fight 2nd seed for the other spot in. And sadly, 5th and 6th are not successful in getting through. Gentlemen, there's a lot to talk about, obviously, on just this section. Does anyone have a preference where we go first?
Yeah. Let's start with the fact that once again we've had the format for play-ins we've had for the last 2 international tournaments, and again, part of the reason we've had this format is because teams have had dropout, allowing these kind of groups to happen. But for what play-ins is and how short it is, I actually quite like this format. In the sense that basically, if you do really well in the best of 1s, you auto qualify out. So that's 1st seed in, out. And then actually, if you come last in the best of, or last in the best of 1 round robin, you're straight out. Everyone else at least gets 1 best of 5. You get at least 1, which is pretty good going for this kind of relatively
It's better
short...
than what we used to have in other systems.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got a little bit of cross-group play because obviously the 2nd seed from the opposite group becomes kind of your final boss. And that means that even if groups are somewhat heavily stacked one way or the other, actually that can kind of weight things better or worse the later on in the tournament goes, because obviously if you auto qualify out of an easier group, that's fantastic. But if you're then 3rd or 4th in that group and you've got to go up against a monster like, I don't know, RNG in the other, that's not so great. So I'm at least play-ins wise, I'm kind of okay with this format. I have more issues with the rest of the tournament and kind of the big gaps between games and everything else. But this little bit of it, I kind of like.
Yeah. I largely agree with that. Personally, it's mixed feelings. I understand. Like, I'm just not a fan of best of ones, especially when it's
That's fair.
potentially your only shot to show off at an international event. I understand it's in the interest of time. I just really, really wish we could do like more best of threes instead. Maybe again, it's a time issue. But I just get the feeling, with 6 teams, some of them might be able to perform better in an extended series. There have been teams historically that, need a bit of time to ramp up. At least on the behalf of CBLoL this time, I will say Loud is not a team that cares about BO3s or BO5s. Like, their BO1s are perfectly fine. So on behalf of CBLoL, yeah, I'm okay with this Worlds.
Rebel, any thoughts for you?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would maybe think about is in the future, rather than 2 groups of 6, 4 groups of 3, if you want to go to best of 3 format. I don't think
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. And then you just take 1 seeds versus 2 seeds from another
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
That does kind of weight, I think, a little bit more for higher seeded like regions. So it would be easy enough for like DRX and RNG. I know that was a problem in past tournaments, but that at least I think opens up a little bit more for best of 3 rather than just best of 1, which can cause some problem. That's probably the only thing that I have a complaint for is best of 1s too. But otherwise, yeah, I think this is the best design.
What about kind of taking that idea and giving it so 5th and 6th played an auto BO3 afterwards, and just like they have an automatic lower seed just created, right? So then it's just a ladder up system, but still second seed is top of the tower, and then like third and for instance, if we look at it how it currently is on like League Esports, where Loud are currently 5th and Chiefs are currently 6th at the moment. Imagine if they played a BO3 and then like Loud
Kept
just
going
like
up the
ran
field.
through the gauntlet in a sense. Like
It'd be
isn't
all
that
more
like an
exciting.
LCK style or like an
Yeah.
LPL style or something?
Mhm.
Interesting. But gentlemen, what I would like to now direct you is the groups that our teams drew in. If we could bring up the 2 groups graphic once again, Spoods. Each of the groups, obviously, we've got Fnatic, Beyond, DFM, EG, Loud, and Chiefs in Group A and B. We have DRX, RNG, Saigon Buffalo's mad, IW, and Isra. So, I feel like, honestly, if you're more of an LJL fan, a Loud fan, I feel like you've got a half decent group. Initialize, what do you think about that?
In some ways, I think this is about as good a draw as you could hope for a lot of the teams like DFM or Loud or Chiefs.
Even
in the
EG.
sense that you have avoided being in a group with both DRX and RNG, and then add in Saigon Buffalo, who are like, not just below them in my mind. And you got Mad in that one group. That is a ridiculous 4 teams alongside 2 other, minor region teams who are no pushovers themselves. I actually think that for likes of DFM in that Group A, they're in the right weight class to be fighting for top 2 there. Now, being in the right weight class doesn't make you a favorite necessarily, but it means you can throw punches with the teams you're playing against. And that's pretty good news because you really want top 2 in that group, like pretty heavily. That's the weakness again of being in a group like this, is because a lot of the, at least on paper, less scary teams are in this one. You really want to be making sure you're not having to be in 3rd, 4th, and then going to play a best of 5 potentially against the likes of an RNG or a Saigon Buffalo or a DRX on the other side. And even if you are 2nd, you're still probably likely going to be playing off against one of the 3rd or 4th teams, which is still probably likely Saigon Buffalo or Mad Lions, who are certainly going to be no pushover in a best of 5, even if you're going to get a bit more data to work with before going into that best of series, which gives you a bit of an edge. That's the caveat there. But at least for my perspective from DFM, I'm pretty happy with that draw.
RMC, Loud, in that same group as DFM and Chiefs, other minor region stompers in the past. I mean, how do you feel about the group for Loud? Do you feel like you kind of wanted maybe one of the other minor regions in with there instead of a swap out with Chiefs maybe? Or are you actually happy for similar reasons as Initialize?
I mean, like Initialize said, for Group A especially, like it's wide open right now. You could rank the teams pretty much in any order, and you could make an argument for it. Would you be right? Hard to say, but there's a good.
For your
case for it.
prediction, if you get it perfect, then yes.
True. Yeah, but there's a good case for it. Is there a better pool potentially? I think one thing we do need to touch on is the fact that Saigon Buffaloes, their roster right now is still a little bit in flux. It's not confirmed yet. So, if they can't get everything lined up here, then Saigon Buffalo might end up potentially being one of the weakest Pool 2 seeds, in which case it would have been better for Loud if they were in the group. But coming in, I'd have definitely said, like, their Pool 2, they kind of got good draws in a way. I think DFM, Evil Geniuses, and Mad Lions are probably slightly below Saigon, in my opinion, right now. So, yeah, fine, Pool 2. Pool 3, I would actually have preferred to see the Wildcats in there. Brazil and Turkey have always liked to go head to head.
That's true.
And I actually think that Brazil is better than Turkey. So I'd rather have that matchup. I've got to admit, I'm not as familiar with Isurus, so I don't know how good they are necessarily here. They potentially have been a decent matchup for us as well. I am a bit worried about Chiefs because I do think Chiefs, they stomped the region, I believe it was 27-1, and they only dropped one game in the finals. That is very scary.
Respect was given by those players and talked about in the region.
Undefeated regular season into a nearly undefeated playoffs run is nuts.
What team does that sound like? Huh?
Reminds me a little bit of this Detonation FocusMe team I could chat about a little bit later if you want.
Yeah, and we can talk about their performance at MSI as well at that point. But, so I'm pretty happy with where Loud landed. I think this is pretty much like one of the best scenarios for them.
Fantastic. And I mean, Rebel, you're in a weird spot here because you're arguably in the group that everybody is going like, glad I didn't get two of the teams there. So how are you feeling about it?
So I think I will state outright what both of you have been dancing around, or maybe even all three of you have been dancing around. Are you familiar with the term Mickey Mouse Group A? Thank you for the solo in here. It basically just means that like getting through this group is not as meaningful as getting through Group E because of how the quality I think does drop a little bit. I think that's pretty tangible, at least on paper, for this group, and that was something that everybody said. So calling them a Mickey Mouse group is just a way of harassing that this group is made up of kind of teams that might be on the lower end, and that is to say it's going to be more competitive. So this is probably going to be a lot more exciting a group because I don't think it's impossible for probably 5 of these teams to make it out. There's one that is CBLoL that I won't mention, but other than that, but even Loud, I think, is competitive inside of this group and can definitely make a push for playoffs. I think Fnatic stands a nose higher than every other team. I expect them to get out, but outside of that, like I'm expecting banger games. Group B is a lot more cut and dry, I think, just because of how loaded the top end is. I'm really hoping Saigon gets to bring their whole roster because I think Saigon versus DRX is actually going to be a surprisingly amazing like best of 5 or best of series between those two if they ever get a chance to play. But I think it's really, really difficult to try to breach the at least RNG gap for the rest of the group. They're almost guaranteed at this point, I think, to take the number 1 there.
I mean, Rebel, at this point to talk about the roster stuff because we've not touched on that yet.
I can touch on that, yeah.
Wait, sorry, but before we get on with seriousness, I want to point something out first to Rebel.
That a clap scene.
We might be a Mickey Mouse group, but guess who owns everything nowadays? Walt Disney, baby.
Okay, and I will tangent us off with the idea that, Rebel, do you think that potentially Saigon might be going trial by fire? Like, if you can beat DRX and RNG, then at that point, then you are just meant to be, right? And if it wasn't going to be, in theory, they're going to get 3rd or 4th at worst, right? Like, it's still not, they're not dead. They just play DFM potentially in a BO5 banger.
Not at all. I really do think that Saigon, with full power, has the ability to play against Mad, against DRX. I think RNG's a bit much, but the other teams are definitely there. The problem with this team right now is we don't know whether or not they're going to have 3 of their star players. Specifically, Shogun's the hard one. You can replace Shogun with Neo. Neo exists in the LCS. He's a Vietnamese player. That's an easy enough substitution if you have to make it happen. But Shogun is the heart and soul of the team. He's in a role that is incredibly important in the meta right now, and he stood up so tall among all these other ADCs that exist. You have like Style. You've probably heard of players like I don't know. There's a bunch of ADCs in the VCS that are really good. We have basically 8 solid like ADCs, and Shogun is the best team fighting ADC of all of them. So not having him would do damage to this team in spades. The other problem is there's no jungler that's a good choice for replacement here because there's the only true option in my mind is to have Gam's backup jungler come play if he has a Visa and he's coming as well. But even that seems like it's a bit up in the air because I know Gam was having problems too. So it would be really horrible that the first Worlds that VCS comes to, they don't get to field both of the full rosters that these teams have come out with, given just how much the teams have come through for the last couple of years.
It'd be truly, honestly, a travesty if that happened. The VCS is obviously respected as a region that has caused upsets when people did not expect the region to punch above and has continuously punched above. And let's hope that they have a triumphant return. Because honestly, I mean, at the end of the day, gentlemen, while we might maybe promote one or two regions, maybe respectively here on this show, we are here to support all minor regions more than anything else and elevate what minor region talent we have. And yes, it would be truly a shame if we sadly couldn't have the whole VCS. And with that in mind, Rebel, do you think maybe the Mickey Mouse group might have been a better option then for Saigon? If that's the case, then maybe.
I suppose I think without their full roster, it still would have been really difficult. They may have been competitive. I think losing Shogun probably would have dropped them to the bottom of that group. In Group B, I will say I don't think Isurus is the greatest of squads. I think they're probably the bottom of that group. Although I want to give respect to Seiya, because Seiya in the mid lane is an
Seiya's
absolute
very good.
monster. He's so good.
That guy's carried so many games solo out
it's
of nowhere.
ridiculous.
Like,
yeah,
he could do it.
absolutely, absolutely. So them and Istanbul, I don't think are impossible to beat if you have the right substitutes in for Saigon Buffalo. If you put them in the Mickey Mouse group or Group A with the substitutes in, I actually think they might get a worse draw because there's 6 competitive teams in that group, no matter what the circumstances, and so all of them can beat you 100%. Whereas in Group B, I think there's more of a clear-cut bottom and top, where it's like, okay, you don't have to beat these teams. You can put all your prep into beating 2 below, try to take the 4 seed, and work your way from there.
Yeah.
Well, Rebel, with that in mind, I mean, I heard you saying something about the TCL, and I don't know if you quite know all of the facts about that, but the funny thing is, we did actually ask someone to pre-record something. We've got at Recollect. He actually made a quick video for us, if our lovely producer could play that, and he can inform you about the TCL.
Oh, wait. Isurus.
LLA? I
love you. Like, the thing is, your face when the producer went, mate, it's the LLA, was the best thing. It's like, so it's still important because it's still the right group and it's still a good team to be talking about, but it is not TCL.
Close. So close, yet so far. Well, everything I just said, but now about Isurus. Yes. Play us the video, Spoods.
Ah, fuck.
Hello. My name is Recollect, and I'm here to talk to you guys about this year's LLA World's Representatives, Isurus Gaming. Now, there's a lot to talk about, so I'm going to try and be as quick as I can do, and hopefully by the end of this, you guys will know a little bit more about the team. So, without further ado, let's get right into this one. Isurus are a team that specialise in late-game teamfighting compositions, which rely on ADD to play engage-based tanks, and Gavoto alongside former World's Representative Seiya to play late-game hyper-carries. However, with their mid-jungle duo underperforming, it's fell on Gavoto to carry them throughout playoffs. Isurus have shown a key priority on Ornn and Aphelios for these reasons, along with bruisers for Grell. My biggest worry for this year's LLA winners is that they won't be able to get their champions due to some key champion pool limitations, and that they may end up getting outmuscled in the early game, as the LLA tends to be a very slow region. They don't exactly tend to prioritize dragons, so don't be surprised to see their backs against the wall in those early stages. If they can make it to the late game though, these sharks are certainly capable of sensing the blood in the water and surprising a lot of people with their performance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you out to @RecollectLol over on Twitter. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can go and catch more information. If you've got any other questions about the LLA, not the TCL, but LLA, but I'm sure he might even try and answer some questions about the TCL. He is a very knowledgeable individual, even did some stuff with the VCS, and he did a fair amount for us over at the LJL of Unofficial as well.
A lot of broadcasts, really, about minor regions.
Insanely talented individual and one of the true minor region experts, honestly, around there. So go give him a follow over on Twitter, ladies and gentlemen. But now we've got some ideas from him about the LLA. Gentlemen, I'm going to have to take us over to a very special graphic. It's one of my favorite graphics. Honestly, Initialize knows this from our podcast, the LJL Unofficial Podcast, plugging it here, of course. It's predictions, ladies and gentlemen. Spoots, if we can get those prediction graphics brought up so we can start saying how we think these teams are going to perform. Can we bring up Group A first and foremost for us, Spoots?
Let's have a look. How spicy are we? Yeah, that's about right.
Okay, so it's going in order: first, second, third, fourth, and then we're saying Chiefs and LA almost unanimously, except for RMC. RMC, you think beyond? What's the quick tip you know about them?
Okay, so first of all, I need to say Chiefs at the bottom, not because they're bad, but literally, if I move Loud out of the bottom, I'm sorry, Chiefs, you just slide down. Like that, everybody else agrees with that too. It's
You
nothing
got to, so
personal.
this is basically just because if you weren't allowed to do well, that's where it's going. I see.
Kind of. I mean, we'll talk about LoL later. I actually do believe they're going to be better than I think a lot of people are expecting here.
That's
I will talk about Beyond though, because we have seen Beyond Gaming before with this same roster, and I do follow the PCS a little bit. Wako is amazingly cracked as an AD carry, but I think as a team, Beyond has shown that they're a little bit slower in the early game, and in this group in specific, I think there are a lot of junglers who can punish that. And while Wako is a great team fighter, he can be suppressed in the laning phase. And again, when I look at a lot of these teams here, the bot lanes are pretty strong. And I don't know if Wako can get out of lane and get to the save point where he can become a team fighting monster. If Beyond Gaming isn't punished by that point, sure, I believe that, they'll do well. But again, I just don't think they can actually get out of the laning phase untouched here.
I mean, what's interesting here, in that idea is, everybody else is against you on that. And honestly, Initialize, you and me have similar kind of tier lists. We've both got Fnatic, DFM. I mean, even Rebel Fox agree with us on Fnatic. What's your reasoning for kind of reaching this lineup?
So I think, at least on paper, Fnatic should be the best team in this group. I say that because I actually think Group A is quite hard to predict clearly. I think Rebel touched on it earlier as well. Look, Group B feels a lot more cut and dry in terms of an upper and lower kind of tier list. Group A, there's a lot of teams who, depending on how they turn up, could be really good or really bad, and there's a lot more... there's a lot closer in strength, I think, for a lot of these teams, which makes it quite hard to predict. I still think Fnatic should be best in this group. I think, particularly if you just look at the raw talent of people like Upset, Humanoid. As long as like the likes of Hylissang and Razork are playing like the earlier parts of the LEC playoffs, they'll be great. If they're playing a little bit off and it's best of ones, that could hurt them. But I still think they should be first. I've then basically gone DFM second because I think they've got a lot of veterancy with a lot of raw talent coming in with some serious skills, and I think people will once again underestimate them. I put Beyond down at third because I think I kind of saw exactly what RMC was saying. The only thing I was saying was the reason I put Evil Geniuses in fourth, though, is basically because I think coming into this group with what could likely be, as I understand it, Cowrie in the ADC position,
that's a big
is
part.
super tough. Because you are asking a rookie substitute AD carry to be going into a group like this. Chiefs have got Raze. That is a veteran superstar for the LCO. You're looking at, Upset, Utapon. You're looking at Wako. That is nuts as far as coming in. Like, poor old Fnatic from 2021 when they had Bean, right? Like, it's a similar situation. That is a rough time for me, and that makes it quite difficult for me to put a lot of faith in Evil Gene, especially in at least from what we've seen, there's still a fair amount of priority around bot lanes.
No,
We'll see whether that becomes true, and that's my point.
And I think that's a fair reason. I mean, Rebel Fox, did you make your prediction prior to the information of EG or after?
I knew.
You knew. Okay, so you've got the interesting point, Rebel, here, because you've got the unbiased view because your team's not here. So if we can just have you explain why you had the maybe definitive version.
Sure. So first off, I think Fnatic played really well to end the split. I think they're coming in on a high, and I think it's going to be easy enough for them to transition into like kind of beating every other team in the group, or at least being ahead above every other team in the group if they're not just dominating everybody. Kaori is a rookie in the sense that he has not played in the LCS previously, but he actually was a TCL superstar inside of their academy region, which is the whole reason he got brought over to EG in the first place. And so I have faith that he's at least able to stand up more so than other players. Like this player, they would not have put faith most likely in making sure that he was going to step in for playoffs when the time came. I think he played pretty well in the LCS playoffs. I don't think he was perfect, but the more time he has to scrim with the team, the more time he has, I think that EG will get back to a similar place. I don't think he's Danny. I don't think EG will be firing on all cylinders, but if they can get to 90%, I think that's sufficient to at least say that they will probably be more consistent than DFM Beyond. The hardest thing for me actually was I think DFM is super good. I think Beyond is super good. I actually think the Chiefs are a really massive underdog, and they are like my dark horse for this group getting like second because they went like undefeated this split. I think they lost one game, which was in playoffs. In their finals, they went 3-1 or something like that. Chiefs are unreal coming in, and I had a very hard time putting them at 5, but like they legitimately might pop off and win this group like 100%. Like this
Like-
this team's good.
You said we say that as a joke. Sorry, RMC, because I'll give you this just after saying, because the thing is, for all that you're saying, Fnatic coming in high, and I agree, I also saw a lot of inconsistency from this team across the LEC. We saw it even in playoffs, right? Like, we saw the upper end of that when Razork gets to pop off on early game junglers like the Trundle, and then he gets demolished by Malrang. And again, of course, Rogue did the exact same thing to G2 literally the day after. But even so, like, we saw like Hylissang flashing forward on Lulu, and we've seen that across the split, where it kind of felt like Upset was kind of the consistent member. Wonder was kind of doing pretty okay as a weak sider, but Humanoid, Razork, and Hylissang had very volatile splits. And if you come into this group on the wrong end of a read of meta with players who have been a bit volatile, you're absolutely right. A team like Chiefs could really well come in and just say, yeah, well, we've taken a win here we shouldn't have done, or actually maybe should have because they were really, really good. Evil Genius is coming in, as we said, with the substitute. They could seriously push to be a top end of this table, and that makes me very nervous about my predictions in this group, because I seriously, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be proven very wrong about predictions for this one.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's why, when we came out, I already said for Group A, I think any team can really take it. There really isn't a clear-cut, team. I do think Fnatic and Evil Genius, even with Kaori coming in, I think they still have a half-step advantage. But 100%, yeah, any of the teams can upset. And that's why, like I said too, Chiefs at the bottom of my predictions, not because I actually think they're at the bottom. It's literally just because the group is so close. And personally, as somebody who casts like CBLoL, I favor regions that are competitive internally, because, like you said, one misread on meta, and you could be wiped out. And in my experience, when you dominate a region, a lot of times you know how to win. The question is, what happens when you're not winning? Do you know how to lose? Do you know how to play with players just as good or better than you? What happens if you lose the laning phase? And are you sure your meta read's right? Because if you're just better than everybody else in your region, maybe your meta read's wrong. Nobody's challenged you on it yet. And that's one of the reasons why I put Chiefs near the bottom, not because they're bad, but just because when you dominate a region, I don't have enough data on you to really get a good feel on how you match up to other people.
I mean, we have seen constant teams all around the world constantly come in highest of highs and then hit like a play-in stage, or even the wild card series when it was like that. And then just completely fall apart because the meta either slightly changed, or maybe they just weren't as good as everybody expected them to be, sadly. And that is a reality sometimes when we don't have enough international events, but that's just a personal gripe I have.
Like, how good is the LCO, right? Like, it's like, and the question is like, okay, so how good is the LCO? How good is Chiefs relative to that? And how good is Chiefs relative to everyone else? Is really hard to calculate because they stomped so hard. I don't actually have a gauge for how good they are relative to other regions, which, I'm hoping like there's potential we'll get some more LCL expertise in at a later date, and I'd love to get some better reads on that, because I'm finding it quite difficult to rate this team.
Yep.
I think that's fair to say. While we did, although I'm sorry to say, RMC, outside of yourself, put the Loud not getting out, I think it's for that exact same reason, right? Like, we all understand the volatility of the group, and we all just preferred certain regions and certain teams at this moment in time. So nothing hard by it. Also, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in my full opinion, you can find that on my YouTube channel. I made a full video already out there, so go find that if you want to go through my full mental process. But before we go into that, before I plug it even more, Smooths, let's go over and have a look at our predictions for Group B. And Rebel, obviously, I'm going to come over to you first here, because you are the Saigon Buffalo one, and you've got a similar group to everybody, but not quite the same. This looks really weird.
I'm matching Rebel here.
Yes. So I think all of us can see the only real question mark is whether or not like Saigon Mad are in like third type place, right? The reason I have them here is because I'm taking an average of, I think they can do much better than fourth place if they've got their full roster. But if they don't have their full roster, I think they even struggle to beat the other two teams. And so I smack them right in fourth place, where they're making playoffs at the bottom end, probably not expected to beat whoever they're against, but they will still make it there, right? That's where I have Saigon, at least without knowing that their full roster is going to be there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I made my predictions with the understanding this would be with Saigon's full roster. I think if they don't have their full roster,
me too.
I think they may well be slipping down to fifth, likely, because I think the Wildcats will be more consistent. Hell, that's got Holy Phoenix on as a roster. That's a guy who's been so good for so long. even Sarah in the mid lane, another guy who's been really, really good for a very long time. And you're like, okay, it's RNG and DRX. Like, you expect a certain level of dominance at play-ins at the very least from those teams. I am hoping against hope that Saigon gets their full roster, because I actually do think they're likely third.
Can I also throw in just one extra caveat,
Go.
which is if Saigon's got their full roster, I have a feeling that we're going to see them take like a 45-minute game against DRX and RNG and beat them. And then they're going to lose like a 30-minute scrappy, like just absolute nothing against Isurus. And they're still going to be third, fourth, but they're going to give like, an absolute like banger performance against one of the top 2 teams in the group for no reason, which would be so sick.
Yeah.
Isn't that the VCS way, though?
Yes, it is.
Exactly. Right. I mean, RMC, you are identical to Rebel here. Do you have any kind of gauge on why we're all the same? I mean, I think it's because RNG and DRX are just outright the best 2 teams in this group, but is there any chance they could blow up?
There's always a chance. I mean, the fact that RNG won MSI and was 4th in their region.
But that's like the LPL's so cracked, though.
Sure, but also like they aren't the most consistent of teams. So is there a chance? Of course there is. But there's also a chance the sun rises in the west tomorrow. So craziness, anything could happen. I'm also just very glad that I'm not actually insane. After looking at our Group A predictions, I was getting a little bit worried for myself. But yes, no, it's just Group A is that nuts. And yeah, we've already touched on it. RNG, DRX, they are. It's kind of more clear-cut in Group B in terms of where people are going to land. And I spoke to Rebel a little bit before this, which is why, I came out with the same prediction as Rebel in a way, because both of us went with the assumption that Saigon Buffaloes might not have full rosters. So, we're kind of just staking, okay, full roster strength, potential roster strength, kind of average to 2. Yeah, third, fourth, I think is roughly where they're going to land. I'm actually looking at Wildcats and Isurus to surprise me a little bit. I always love a good underdog story. And Wildcats, they aren't as bad as their record might suggest. They're actually a really competitive team. The problem is just that they aren't winning. Like, they'll do really, really well up to like that 30-minute mark, and then they'll just kind of fall off. Like, their early games are actually pretty good, internationally speaking. So maybe they can pull off an upset here or there. I'm specifically looking at, against Saigon Buffalo and Mad Lions. Maybe they can cheese their way through or not cheese, but maybe they can get a good enough early game to be able to close out. And like I said, I don't know enough about Isurus here. Based on what Recollect was saying, that didn't exactly embolden me to think they might do better than where we've got them. But hey, maybe they surprise me. Anything's possible.
I mean,
and also, like, if a team performs up to expectations, that's just like, as long as they have that 1 or 2 good showing, that's like sometimes like all you can go home with, going, well, we weren't expecting the best anyway. So I mean, hey, if we got anything good, you take that back, and then you hope for that spring summer next year. That's where the whole idea is. And sometimes regions have to take a year off. It's not unknown. I mean, DFM in 2020, arguably, Sam, they had to take a year off to really kind of re-gauge everything. And 2021, they came back empowered, didn't they? Like, teams do, and regions do take years off.
I mean, I think sometimes as well, it's when a team has been very good with a roster that's been very good for a long time, and then suddenly the meta shifts away and people just burn out and can't quite get back on the grind. League is a very ruthless game when it comes to being... how do I put this? Like, continually up to the mark. I think the guy that I always remember about this is someone like High, when he had his really unfortunate injury, which meant you had to have, I think it was Link of all people, stepping in for Cloud9. And he came back afterwards and was never quite the same player again. The only champion he seemed to be able to play properly was Corki at the time. And eventually he kind of had to role swap, left league, came back in. And he was never, before that, he was kind of like competing with Bjergsen to be the best mid in the region kind of thing. And it's that similar kind of deal with someone like, say, DFM in 2020, where you had Seros, who was this incredible mid laner for such a long time. He was the Heimerdinger, Ziggs, Karma player who was playing all this quirky stuff, playing a particular playstyle. And suddenly it just didn't work anymore. And he would have certain champions he could pull out of nowhere. Like, suddenly the Azir for him was quite good, but Aurelia couldn't play it. Zoe couldn't play it. And you have these moments as teams, as regions, where your stars can't do what made them stars anymore for whatever reason. The game has changed, the meta has changed, they just aren't quite as with it as they were, and you have to think about rebuilding. And that means that suddenly, when a lot of your talent's been nucleated in one team and suddenly that talent isn't as good anymore, people are scrambling to work out what the talent is in a region anymore. What do they need to import? Do they need to work on it again? Was it the team's management that was helping build these teams to be good, or was it the players themselves that just had this incredible chemistry, particularly in a minor region where sometimes structures and infrastructure isn't as well established? Yeah.
I'd love to ask you the question here about DFM as a team that went through this whole process. Who is that team? Who is that player on Detonation FocusMe that people should be watching out for come
Oh,
Worlds? Because,
gosh.
I mean, there's a lot of names on this roster, but only 3 remain that were on that 2021 roster.
Man, so there's a
Who would
number
you
of
want to
players
build?
there's a number of players I could touch on here. So the ones that are worth reminding, the people that have been there for a long time are Ebby, Steel, and Utapon. Utapon is now the longest standing player on a roster outside of Faker. Faker has been with SKT, now T1, for longer overall. But critically, Utapon has never been subbed out. So even when Faker had people like Closer and EasyHoom when he was getting subbed out occasionally, that's never happened with Utapon. So in some ways, he's had the longer extended run, and he's played, what has he played? He's played top lane, jungle, support, and bot lane. The only lane he's never played competitively and won on is mid lane. Like, this guy is cracked. And I think I will touch on him because I'm pretty sure a lot of other places you'll get stories about Ebby. You'll get some stories about Steel. But Utapon is a player who has been just so high level for so long. And even if he's not always been the uncontested best player in the role in the bot lane, because the LJL's actually had quite a lot of good bot laners over the years, Utapon's always been in the consideration to be top 2 at the very least. And that is insane over the course of a career that started since 2014. And this split in particular, oh my god, this guy has been incredible. After an MSI where DFM kind of underperformed relative to the expectations of 2021, Unipon was still the guy who was popping off on things like the Lucian, who could still pull out the late game carries. The versatility of the player, not just in terms of champions, but in terms of playstyle. You can ask this guy to play weak side low economy, weak side surprisingly high resource, scale to 3 items. Strong side Lucian Nami or Draven or Kalista even more recently. That kind of versatility is incredible, and especially doing it alongside a guy like Harp, who's this rookie player who's coming in and is a real sort of firebrand superstar who's playing, Karma and diving tier 2s to get solo kills with the tether. Like, you've got a real firebrand of a bot lane, which should be really, really exciting. And while Ebby is a monster, and you should be very excited about the top side, please do not count out Utapon. The guy has hit the top rank or the top echelon of play in nearly every game he's touched. He was the best rated Overwatch player in Japan for a while. He's like,
He's discovered speedrunning tactics
Yeah,
in
of
games and
course he
stuff. Like
has.
he's incredible. I mean, Udapon, he's the guy that asked Riot Japan, "Can I play Pro Valorant?"
Right,
for
it was a
DFM?
joke, but he was defending it because he was in the top. Actually, he was like top 200 in Valorant in Japan. He's global elite in CS:GO. Like, the guy's just got golden hands. It's nuts.
And don't mess with him. He's still good in a bot lane, or arguably in a regional meta, which is AD carry focus. So he's still got hands, ladies and gentlemen. But RMC, I want to come over to you, sir. Tell me about the players of Loud. Tell me why people shouldn't count them out. Tell everybody here why and who will put Loud on their back when it's needed, when it's required.
For sure. Now, I think a lot of people are underestimating Loud because it's in CBLoL when he was on Renska here. And he's a Korean player who has never actually played competitively for a Korean team. He played in the IESF Esports World Championships for South Korea. I'm not familiar with that, and I'm not sure if that really counts. But other than that, he's played in China for LGD. He's played in the LJL Challenger Series, actually, under Rampage Quintet. He's played in the then OPL, what the LCO was before, on Chiefs, actually. So we'll be meeting up with his former organization coming in this Worlds. And he's a really aggressive player. In CBLoL English, we have a joke, yup, Croc, because Croc makes some incredible early game moves. And we'll just be like, okay, yep, Croc, that's just Croc. He does things like that. And that's one of the reasons too, like I was saying, for Beyond Gaming specifically, if you're running into these aggressive jungles, you're really going to struggle. And I think Loud has one of these early game junglers who can suppress a lot of these teams and allow the rest of the team to scale up. Mid lane, Tinones. If you've never heard of this guy, you've probably never followed Brazil at any international event. He's been to international events 3 times now, or this will be his 3rd time, pardon me. Once to Worlds 2014, like I mentioned, kaboom, hence why I got voted out, X. And last year at MSI 2021, and he just seems to perform especially well against EU teams. 2014, he took out Alliance. 2021, he stole Baron against Mad Lions. And because of him, Pain Gaming at the time was only 1 inhibitor away from potentially winning that and actually getting out of groups here. And you can see the game was pretty close. He gets in there, he steals that. And this is not something, not a one-off thing. Tin Owns will clutch it out over and over and over again. Like, he is unshakable, unflappable. And he's the superstar to me. He's the guy to watch for this team. If they win, if they get out of groups or planes, pardon me, it's because of Tin Owns. Now, the bot lane, I love the bot lane. Brancy, I've mentioned before, new rookie, just played CBLoL this split too. So it's not even the year. It's half a year he's played. And this guy pulls out 2 quadra kills in the playoffs against some of the best teams in CBLoL here. Despite the fact that he's a rookie, the man has 0 fear. All he experiences is excitement when he goes up against high-level players. So I think he really can perform. But he's a rookie, and he's the one where I'm a little bit worried about for Worlds because the pressure is very different. And when you go international as well, there's the whole having to adapt to things and whatnot. We'll have to see if he's able to pull off the same performance, especially in Group A when the AD carry position is so incredibly stacked. Another thing about him is he hasn't played Sivir at all, which is the other worry. His Zeri is incredibly good, as we're going to see. I think both his quadras actually come off of Zeri, but yeah, if you ban the Zeri, we'll have to see if he picks up Sivir before then. But I expect to see Zeri perma-banned against him. Support, Sales, I won't say too much about him. He's another pretty experienced player. He's actually won CBLoL before, but hasn't gone to an international event. So I'm pretty excited for him to get his shot here because he won in 2019 Split 1, or 2020 Split 1, pardon me. But because of COVID, there was no MSI. So he didn't get his shot. This will be his first international performance as well.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot of history around this team. I love it just hearing things about Tim Owens because I'm just so used to hearing him. Every other event, it feels like he's representing, even if it's not always on the same team. Croc, a journeyman, I believe is the term, isn't it? Initialize for a player who's played across multiple regions.
So journeyman is kind of the step between rookie and veteran. I think sometimes we get a little bit lost with working out whether what a player is when they're not a rookie anymore, but they're not really a veteran either. And journeyman is the term. And I think particularly over a period of play where a lot of players haven't actually experienced like hardcore LAN environments. The likes of Larson, I think his first, for Rogue, for example, his first experience really in a stadium was in his home country winning the LEC. That's nuts. There's a world where that could really get to a player and they don't play well.
We'll have to check out for that loud bot lane for that exact reason.
Exactly. And Kalisa Tino's in a similar semi-situation, right, where they've kind of been, they're not quite veterans yet, and especially in terms of experiences had, this will be a big one. Traveling internationally, playing LANs internationally, coming in to your first international despite having earned it before, despite however it's gone. Big deal. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see. We will absolutely see by that. But Rebel Fox, sir, if you can run us over how the Saigon Buffaloes are gonna prevail, why they prevailed first in the VCS, and also how they're going to go through plans. Maybe they end up 3rd or 4th, but how they're going to win those best of 5, stomp the competition, and make the group stage for the VCS.
So to kick this off, I want to pull up a really fun graphic that I had Spoods make up for me, which is the number of unique champions. And again, I'm not perfect, so this is number of unique champions as I found. So you've got like Saigon Buffalo at 63, tied with DRX, RNG's at 61. Some of these are cheater because like DRX obviously plays more games, RNG plays more games, that type of thing. So you've got regions like LLA or CBLoL, things like that, where they don't play even like half the number of games. So this isn't a pure indication of the number of unique champions that you could play, nor like the variety of champions. But it's worth pointing out because there's a lot of like unique strategies that Saigon bring to the table. And so walking into this, I think it's really easy. I've talked about Shogun plenty and how much I anticipate Shogun playing really well. Not knowing who else is going to be on this roster, I'll throw out a shout out to BJ because I think the meta is going in his way. And Hosmed is definitely going to be there. He is the veteran of the squad, and he is one of the best team fighting top laners that exists, probably not just in the plan, but maybe in the entire tournament. So I'll give credence to him. But this team is going to be built on one rock, and that rock is Taki. Taki was one of the players that got brought in 2020 when they needed substitutes to come in. He, alongside Ariety, who ended up getting booted off the team, and BJ were the players that kind of replaced their counterparts on the squad. And from basically minute one, Taki has looked like one of the most special supports that I think I have seen inside of any region. I think the best qualification I can give to him is Baby Keria, because Keria played 21 champions, this split specifically. Taki played 17 in 8 less games, and he didn't play with a Senna player because Shogun does not play Senna. So if you're talking about like grand
really
scheme
running
of things,
the gauntlet at that point, isn't
really
it?
running the yeah, truly, yeah. Also, Keria tried to steal his tech because they played together, or they played against one another when they were at MSI, and Taki had stolen the Rumble tech in the support role, had it win 2 times for him over the course of this split, and then Keria tried to yoink the Camille support tech this split, got absolutely trounced on it, but Taki did win with that because he is an absolute beast. He's got hands better than most supports that can actually exist. He makes map impacts and he reads maps, I think, better than the majority of supports. He's one of the best vision control players inside of the VCS as well, something that goes very, very undersold on broadcast or anything like that, something that not a lot of people pay attention to, but he's very good at controlling vision to help this team set up. And this is actually, I don't know whether or not this is, I think that we had this readily available. I didn't even ask. The Spoods is smurfing
that
here.
Is
but
wild.
this champion pool is wild. He plays everything, and he is a beast at all of them. There is nothing you could point at on this list that you couldn't find a highlight play on. One of my highlights as a caster was getting to watch his Alistar make an absolute beast defense of a top lane dive. It was one of the loudest I've ever been during the course of a 3 a.m. cast, which is pretty crazy. But this is somebody that, like, he's tried to compete for the number 1 spot. B is still ahead of him because B is a better shot caller, much more consistent. But Taki has the potential to be the best support in the VCS and one of the best supports, I think, in the World's tournament in the right circumstance. If this team has substitutes and they can't be here at full power, if they want to make use of all of this strategy that they've had, having all this diversity of champion that Ren can come up with, because Ren is a genius as a coach, this is where you have to funnel it through. Taki has to step up and be the superstar that he can be.
Maybe you just spam a lot of Senna games, because I do remember they've got a crack Senna, and they're one of the few supports out there that also do play it. A lot of supports default to just the generic other thing. I mean, they can play both the Time Cage and the Senna talents, and I imagine they can play Cho'Gath, honestly speaking. I was surprised, honestly, not to just see the crazy, real dark technology, but I'm honestly sure Taki has it in them. And honestly, RMC, I'm terrified of Saigon Buffaloes after that.
Yeah, fair enough. I was gonna say Rumble support not dark enough for you last one, because
well, we saw that back in 2020 in the LJL, because we used to have we have a Rumble support player, so Enti, who was on the second place team. Sengoku Gaming this time around. This guy, so he used to be sort of blank in the jungle of SKT fame. Was on Sengoku at the time, and he was playing Kiana, and so you'd have Kiana Jones and the Carpets of Doom, where it was Senna Rumble throwing down their ulted lines across Kiana. It was disgusting.
I have a really interesting story too, because I'm pretty sure this tech came about because they needed a counterpick for top lane. So Gam's top laner, if you know who he is, Keria, he learned Urgot tech from LJL because they were screaming.
He's done it. He's done it.
Somebody they need a counterpick here. So what happens is Saigon Buffalo picks Camille, and then immediately Keria busts out this insane Urgot that everyone's terrified of. I've never seen him lose on this champion before. And out of nowhere, Saigon Buffalo locks Vayne, and we're like, what? Goes top lane, they throw Camille at support, Taki gets like 4 kills in the laning phase. So,
Genius.
like top lane Hosmed just absolutely smashes the Urgot matchup. Game's over. It was amazing. It's that's the flexibility. That's the cool stuff that this team can do with those types of players.
I feel like it works because you've got Shogun down there.
True.
Actually, can I ask this question at this point? Because obviously, my understanding of Shogun in spring was actually he wasn't all that impressive from what I was hearing from some of the VCS English guys, and there was a little bit of like, look, this guy's actually maybe not even top 4 AD carry in the region in spring. So, like, how much of a glow up has this guy had over the year? Because I mean, while Taki's always been a monster, like I've never heard anything negative about the guy.
Okay.
Shogun, I kind of had a little bit more caveats for.
So, like I said, the thing about the VCS is that we have some of the most absurd ADCs. I don't know if you've heard of Artemis before. Artemis.
Oh,
is
I
like,
have. I remember
Artemis
him.
is a king. Artemis is like the main character of the VCS, and the fact that he's not in playoffs or not at Worlds is just a travesty to the region. Then you've got like Eddie was on one of the best teams, like one of the undefeated teams, top 2. Celebrity currently has the most pentakills of anybody in the world. He passed Doublelift last year and still holds that record to this day. Slater was like a Worlds competitor for a number of times. So like all these other ADCs are like popping off, and Shogun is just a good team fighter. And so it's like he's not doing anything. Now we're in team fight meta. And so all these other ADCs are positioning too aggressively, or they're way too safe with their positioning, like Eddie, which is what costs their teams, because they're not getting any damage. Shogun is always perfectly positioned. He is a beast at knowing exactly where to be and destroying the enemy team by just being on his own. Like he, as an individual player, knows exactly what he needs to do in a team fight. That's why this split was so sexy.
They also have a very solid laning phase, because sometimes we see players that are very good in team fighting sometimes struggle in the laning phase aspect. I'm guessing Shogun has a fantastic laning phase as well on top of everything else.
It helps that he's got Taki alongside him. I think his laning phase is good, but it helps that he's got Taki there. I think Taki's a lot of that too.
It's not uncommon that sometimes if you have a cracked support, I mean, Team Liquid tried to do that previously with Core JJ, right? Carrying certain team members. Certain team members, depends on who you'd want to talk about there. I don't know. But with that said, though, gentlemen, this has been the minor region unofficial broadcast. The unofficial broadcast, it feels so great to just have you all. Obviously, we brought together the LJL, the VCS, and the CBLoL all here. We talked about a lot of the different regions. I want to come over first to you, Rebel Fox. Is there anything you would like to plug, shout out, or just mention in general?
I'm just excited for Worlds to start. I'm really looking forward to seeing all these regions get represented. I like to see VCS, even if they're not at full strength. I'm just excited to see some VCS players finally get back to the world stage for the first time in 3 years since 2019. That's going to be some exciting stuff. So make sure to throw some support up for them and everybody else, because obviously, LJL, VCS final, CBLoL final for like Worlds, like that's the goal here, and we'll get there this year. But like we'll have to see which regions actually end up in that position.
And where can we find you as well, sir?
Oh, I'm on Twitter at RebelFoxCasts, so you can go there. I don't do anything else, and I barely post. But if I do post, I'm casting somewhere, so that's always good.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, absolutely. I want to bring it now over to Random Minion Caster or Random M Caster on Twitter, I believe, sir.
Yep.
Same as before as Rebel. Anything else to plug, say, or whatever?
Just all Rebel. GAM at least guaranteed, right? Right? Have they got their visas?
Guaranteed for Worlds. Finals.
Yeah, their main event, they're good, so you have another support.
The roller coaster I went on there.
Yeah, I will say, people are sleeping on Loud. I am very excited for Group A. I think Group A is going to be absolutely nuts to watch. Regardless who ends up coming out of it, I'm sure it's going to be an absolute banger of a time. So hashtag go loud. All the Brazilian support. We've got the craziest fans. Even if we don't win, you know what? The experience would have been amazing. And yeah, you can find me, like Mas1 said, Random M Caster up there. Random Minion Caster was too long for Twitter, so follow me on there. And yeah, hopefully, I believe we're currently working on the prep doc for CBLoL for World, so hopefully that gets done soon. And yeah, we'll see when that comes out, but I'll post when it does.
Follow him and you'll find out, ladies and gentlemen. It's crazy how that works. Make sure you put that notification bell so you get every single tweet from them as well. So you always like it. Be that notification squad. Sam, how can people notification squad you, sir? As well as also, have you got anything else you'd like to say about DFM or just the show?
So you can find me at Initialize on Twitter and Instagram, though you'll have to note that the L is a 1 because someone out there has initialized with the L. so I have to cheat a little bit. But alas, that's the way of things. And yeah, I think you should be very excited if you are an LJL fan. Again, this is a pretty exciting and playable group. That is the big thing. And I think DFM have been on an upward trajectory, even though they lost Aria. They've pulled in Yaharong, who's really improved over the year. And the likes of Ebby's champion pool expanding of all things in terms of playstyle. The guy is still pulling out Tryndamere and murdering people if he needs to occasionally. It's nuts. You've got this kind of occasionally changing playstyle for the bot side where they can play more lane dominant, where Steel is feeling a lot more empowered to be a playmaking carry for the team when they need him on things like the Wukong and the rest of it. It's great news. This team should be an exciting one to watch. They are absolutely gunning for top 2. Can they make it? Another question. But they're in the right weight class, even if other people are higher up that fight ticket. Don't take your eyes off this group. Should be a spicy one. And watch Amazon European Masters on the weekend. I'm very excited. You got to be keeping up for those semis and finals. Just saying.
Oh, I'm excited for them, mate.
More minor regions.
Oh, I mean, honestly, it is its own minor region tournament, really, at this moment in time.
Yeah.
I mean, if the NFL's anything, it's rivaling CBLoL, but not rivaling CBLoL. We won't talk about viewership numbers here, ladies and gentlemen. I want to just shout out our coordinator, producer, and honestly, graphics extraordinaire at CBLoL. Spoods, thank you so much. I don't know if you can unmute and say thank you for doing this, but you are an absolute powerhouse, and we thank you so much for doing a show and pulling us all together, honestly, coordinating all of this. That's just half of the work, and we really do appreciate you for doing that. Thank you. Make sure to go and follow him and say thank you to them over on Twitter. And also, you can share love out to each of the unofficial broadcasts represented here, and that's going to be at VCS_English, at LJL Unofficial, and at CBLoL_English. And for me, myself, Mars1, your host, you can find me at Mars1 on all social media platforms. I'm mostly on Twitter, but I do have an Instagram. I sometimes use Twitch, and I'm trying to throw up a YouTube channel, so give me a subscribe there. I would really appreciate it. I gave my power rankings and predictions for play-ins. I'll probably do another one for actual group stage, and I might just do content, but I'm doing it a lot more meme sense, where I am kind of serious, but not serious at the same time. But that's me, and I'm just excited for minor region support. Honestly, I just want minor regions to do well. More minor regions that make it out. Let's make sure RNG and DRX don't make it out. Let's have the Wildcats go. I'll be game for that, and let's get minor regions represented. Let's go, Holy Phoenix. Ooh, I want to see that man pick up a trophy one day. God, feel good, wouldn't it? But with that said, thank you so much for listening and or watching. You can make sure you can find this VOD for anyone just catching us at the very end. You'll find that on the at VCS English YouTube channel. But thank you so much for listening and watching, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you all very soon for episode 2 next week or at some point. Follow our social media channels for that. Bye bye.